Hey, what's up? It's James Steele. So recently, Brent Smith from Shinedown stopped by the studios. And I didn't really officially start the interview. Like, we were rolling when I came in there, but we kind of were just BSing back and forth and talking about his son, who's decided to go all in on basketball. So Brent was telling me about how great his son's new coach is, and that's kind of where the conversation starts right here. So Brent Smith from Shinedown, an interview at the FM 109 studios.
I love the fact that his coach, like Thursdays, are devoted specifically to mental health and meditation. Like, so Thursdays are like, they meditate with one another. Like, he kind of helps him center him. You know, I didn't know this, but like Phil Jackson, you know, legendary coach for the Bulls, he was one of the first coaches to bring in Native American meditation and kind of like grounding. I don't know if you know what grounding is. Literally where you take your socks and
touch
shoes
grass,
off and you go outside and you put your feet on grass. And there's like all of this research that has come out in the last like probably 6 to 7 years where certain people are like, this is a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And they've done clinical like trials on it now where they've taken people that have never done it for like people that don't do it for like a month. And then the people that did ground for like 20 minutes a day. And like all of the kind of like the body heat sensory stuff that they check on, like everything is like leveled off for the people that ground them. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I've read some about that. That seems pretty cool. Getting closer to nature again and,
literally
and feeling the earth.
The energy of the earth, like helping you stabilize, just kind of balance you. His trainer's very like forward thinking in that because he's like he has to, you know, learn how to center himself and block out everything, all that noise and everything else. Like when you're in the middle of a competition, you literally have to like not going into tunnel vision. He looks at it differently. With my son's name is Lyric. You know, Lyric has to push out from the peripheral and like look at the whole picture. Like in the band, we have a saying, which is, you got to remember, don't make it about the painter. You got to make it about the painting. You know, so it's just teaching him how to look at things differently on top of the skill level and the physicality, but just locking in, making your mental health just as important as your physical health.
Have you been meditating more since he started doing this 2 weeks ago?
It's actually, you know what? I have not started, but I am extremely interested in it now, just finding out more about the grounding philosophy and just even 20 minutes a day just to kind of find a quiet place. You don't have to it's not the whole thing where like you need, you know, the bells to ring or the thing that make the noises or anything like that, or, you know, sit in a certain position. It's just taking 20 minutes or even 10 minutes out of your day to find a silent place to just be inside of your thoughts and your mind and your body and your spirit. Like my son definitely, and in this generation, I find that, you know, with social media, I've always told him the same thing, which is just remember you're in control of the device isn't in control of you. And so there's a lot of noise out there. And when you break it down, it's the same thing with like physical activity. Back in 2010, I'm 5'8", I weighed about 230 pounds. And I had to make a conscious decision to get in shape. And I ended up in a year, I lost 70 pounds. I then learned how to eat right, learn how to exercise. That completely changed my whole way of looking at life in general when I found fitness. So I think you have to remember there's a lot of noise out there, but you have to prioritize. Every day is going to throw you a different curveball at times, but you know, it's important to get sleep. It's important to have rest. It's important to center yourself. There's always going to be, you know, flashy lights, you know what I mean? There's
especially
always
you're on the road all the time.
Yeah, all the time. But you have to be grounded in yourself too. And, you know, that's not some hippie mentality. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just you have to check in on yourself sometime.
You can get lost in all this nonsense.
It's important.
Well, that's good to hear about your son, man. That's great news.
Yeah, I'm stoked for him. You know, it's just all about determination. I also, too, me and him have always had an open dialogue about failure, which is I'm never going to be disappointed in you as long as you give it 100% of, you know, everything that you are. You got to fail in life in order to know what to do next time. It's a tool that will help you learn and help you grow, not only as a person, but just from the mentality side of life. Because the thing is, the way that me and him have a dialogue with each other is because we're both really competitive anyway. But I'm like, you need failure because your life and your legacy won't be built by your failure. It'll be built by the fact that you refuse to give up.
Do you remember the first big failure that you really learned from that maybe even set you up to where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I still fail, like all the time.
Like every day.
Every day. There's always something. But, you know, I try to have more victories than loss, but I probably learn the most from the loss. But, you know, I think it just depends more than anything. I always try to push myself and I try to get uncomfortable, like more than maybe the average individual would. Sometimes people will say to me, like, do you just want to torture yourself? And I'm like, it's not that I'm torturing myself. I'm trying to see if I can accomplish something that seems almost otherworldly and do it in steps. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you have to look at it with different, I guess my perspective is different. But I mean, it would be the same thing in regards to songwriting. Like I tell people all the time, I'm a musician and I'm a performer. But the songwriting aspect is you write 100 songs and you hope you wrote 10 really good ones. You pray you wrote one phenomenal one, and then you write 100 more.
Do you remember the first song you ever wrote?
I do. And people are astonished when I say this, but it's actually, it became our very first alternative #1 back in 2006, which off of our second album, our sophomore record, Us and Them, and it was the first single, Save Me. That's the first song I ever wrote.
How old were you?
I was 16.
You wrote that at 16?
I wrote it at 16.
That was just in your blood from the beginning, it feels like.
Well, what's interesting is that we were doing that record, we were creating that record, and I wrote the song. I had the verses for the most part, and I had most of the chorus, and then a songwriting partner of mine, Tony Battaglia, who was actually the producer of that record, that second album, Us and Them, we were kind of finished with the writing process, and he was looking at everybody like, unless anybody's got anything they want to share with the group, you know, before we start doing, before we start doing the mix, because we literally were two weeks away from going to Miami and getting the record mix with Tom Lord Alge. His brother Chris Lord Alge's done multiple albums for us as well. But I'd kind of slept on this song my whole life, and I said, why not? I'll show it to him. And I showed it to them, and they were all like, dude, let's go. Let's get in here and flush it out. And so that technically was the first song that I can recall actually writing from scratch, or at least having the first idea of putting something original from myself out there into the world.
You describe certain songs as gifts.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So a gift is a song that, because it is so necessary that it needs to be born, that it utilizes you as a vessel because it's necessary to be created. I know that's a lot to unpack as I say that. You don't get a gift on every record. In all true honesty here, off the first album, 45 was a gift. Off of Sound of Madness, Second Chance was a gift. And off of Planet Zero, A Symptom of Being Human was a gift. I think in a lot of ways too, like on Attention, there was a song called Get Up, and that was a gift too. And a gift is a song, again, it kind of writes itself because it's utilizing you as a vessel to be created. But it's just, for us, you don't always get those. Songwriting is a craft, and like anything, practice makes perfect, but there is nothing perfect about being a songwriter. You're going off of an instinct and an emotion. We're a band that's been talking about mental health for the better part of 2 decades before it was brought to the forefront. And in this modern day, I'm glad that it is being brought to the forefront. But the fact of the matter is, Symptom was written at the height of the pandemic, at the very beginning. And we knew people were frustrated, that they were lonely, that they were concerned, they were scared, they were angry. And all these emotions were very evident, not only in the United States, but just around the entire world. And I think about it that day. It was one of the first songs written for the album, Planet Zero. And I just remember thinking to myself when we finished it, the whole song is a representation of we're all a work in progress. You're allowed to have as many human moments as you need in your lifetime. That's part of the evolution of who we are. But we're all connected. And really that song is hopefully inspiring people to also understand, for us in Shinedown, these types of songs are built from the hope that people understand that we want you to live to fight another day.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful song.
Thank you.
The first time I heard it on the radio and on the big I lost my mind. I mean, it is absolutely the production, your voice, the lyrics. It's mind-blowing how and you describe that as a gift, and I guess it makes sense, but I couldn't even imagine. Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think it came from who I wrote the song with also, too, which is Eric Bass. So Eric Bass is the bass player in the band, but Eric is probably a bass player last. And what I mean by that, your audience may not know this, the last 2 full-length Shinedown records have been engineered, mixed, and produced by Eric in their entirety. So it's very rare to have a band member be able to not only facilitate that kind of savant mentality and the willingness to understand. Not only he plays 11 different instruments, guy has perfect pitch, he's a brilliant songwriter, and he's an incredible lyricist. And myself and Barry and Zach were very, very fortunate to have him as our brother in this marriage, if you will, of being in a band and doing this for a living. That song in particular, me and Eric wrote Symptom together, and I think a lot of it is his bar is so high when you're in the room with him, but also too, being in the band is one element, but he's a fantastic facilitator. He's a great producer. He's a very open-minded individual when it comes to engineering an album and really giving you confidence. He doesn't come from the school of like walking in and being threatening or like belittling the musician or anything of that nature. He's always walking in with a good attitude and a pretty... He often will say, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, meaning like you walk in and you may be scared because you don't know what's going to happen that day, but you don't let in on that.
Yeah.
You just walk in the studio and, how's everybody doing today? We're going to have a great day. And in your mind, you're like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to pull this off?
You're holding a blank sheet of paper and there's nothing on the computer.
And the beautiful thing about that, like we have a saying in the band, interesting that you would bring up the blank piece of paper because it's the same thing with an empty tape reel or an empty Pro Tools session. Yep. We call that staring down the beast, which is something is not there and you're about to create it out of thin air. So I think when you're writing songs, the way that we try to go in, we try to never write the same song twice. We try to do our best to not make the same record over and over again. So listen, man, we've set the bar for ourselves high to begin with, but I think that you're only going to be as good as the people you surround yourself with. And I'm very, very lucky. I'm surrounded by some incredible people.
Amazing people. What is Planet Zero?
Planet Zero was based off of the idea that, again, this is a concept record, but it was the concept of happening in real time of everything that was going on in the world during the pandemic with social unrest and just everything that, everything had become polarized. Mm-hmm. And it felt like we had gone back to zero in a lot of ways. And because everything that you knew was also kind of being thrown out the window. Everybody has a platform to some degree. And obviously I'm talking about social media and what have you, but you were seeing the curtain get pulled back with what was actually going on behind the scenes. But also too, you didn't know who to trust because you didn't know who was actually giving you real facts or if they were made up or if there was an agenda and all these different things were happening. And I just remember Eric looking at me at one point in time. We started writing for the record in June of 2020. And I remember one day he just looked at me and said, it feels like we're on Planet Zero.
There it was.
And there it was.
Great song too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Definitely
it was
a great song.
But there were some nervous people at the record label when I said, hey, this is the first single. But it was important that was the first song because it had nothing to do with picking a side. It had more to do with we all as the people need to hold ourselves accountable. From a political standpoint, we were looking at things from the ideology of it doesn't matter if you're in the middle or if you're left or right. Like this is our survival, as people. Also, we share this planet with other life forms and organisms and, we're not on this planet alone. And I think that the way that we saw things was that we wanted people to remember, and that was during a political year. We're getting ready to go into another political year. But the thing is to remember that representatives in government, that's exactly what they are. They're representatives of the people. They're not God. You know what I mean? And so they're there to represent us, and you have to hold them accountable for that. But at the same time, you got to point the finger at yourself. But we've got to learn how to be able to have discussions with one another and it be okay to disagree. That doesn't mean we got to fist fight each other.
It's okay to disagree.
It's totally fine. Because here's my thing. I want to learn something from you that maybe I don't know, but I'll give you the respect and let you say your opinion as long as you'll give me the respect and let me have a rebuttal and give you mine. And we can work it out, shake hands, and move on.
Fair enough.
I'm sure there's a way that we can, you will find something that you didn't know by having a constructive conversation with someone. And honestly, to go back to the Warner Music Group and Elektra Records and Atlantic Records, Shinedown's been on Atlantic Records for the better part of 2 decades. It's a very Shakespearean tale. We've also been with the same manager, Indigood Entertainment, and Bill McGathy for the last 2 decades. None of these individuals have ever handcuffed us in any way creatively. They've always allowed us to be who we are and to be artists. They've never put a clock on us in the studio, and they've always been very supportive of who we are as artists and allowed us to have a platform, but also they want us to grow as artists as well.
Do you find yourself in your position now listening to any new bands or artists?
All the time.
Yeah? Do you have some favorite ones?
I mean, the guy that I'm the biggest into right now is this Benson Boone kid. That he's just blowing up right now. The name of the song is Beautiful Things, I think is the name of it. But also, too, like, there's such an influx of new music as well that it's hard to keep up with a lot of it. I mean, I've been, Bad Omens is a band that I was super, super just kind of blown away with in the last, couple of years. Didn't know a lot about them and have really become a big part of my playlist. But also, too, look, in February of 2022, I went to everybody in our organization and I said, this fall, we're going to bring a guy out on tour with us named Jelly Roll, and you're going to need to trust me. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? And the rise of this man is, first of all, 100% deserved. It is amazing to see another artist, because in Shinedown too, man, it's not about formats with us. We don't want our music put into a box, and the same thing that Jelly does in the way he presents himself as authentic and real. And that's what you're seeing a lot more now with new artists, and how moving forward, people are only looking for the hair on the back of their neck to stand up. It's got to affect them in some ways. I don't think it's about rap music, rock music, alternative music, pop music, country music. It's about all music. And
does
I
the
think
music tell a story? Yeah,
and that's what I'm looking at the most with, different artists or artists that I didn't know a lot about. Billie Eilish being one of them. I remember I was in the early days of Ocean Eyes with her, where I was like, this is a 13-year-old girl with this voice from I don't know where. And, I think back, the last time I heard a female vocalist use her voice like an instrument like that was Amy Winehouse. Yeah. So, there's so many new artists that are coming out right now. And also there's a lot of nostalgia too. I mean, I got to be honest with you, emotionally for alternative, I don't know if you're like me, but it's just been an amazing last couple of years to have
really
Blink 182 back, Green Day back in the fold again. Fall Out Boy's been crushing it, and you all giving us, in Shinedown, the opportunity to come back to alternative radio after roughly over a decade now, with the symptom of being human and breaking the top 10 on the format. And, we're trying to go all the way to the top. But, you guys and girls have really welcomed us back with open arms. But I think it has a lot to do with the song.
You described in a few other interviews people who use their voice as an instrument. What does that mean, and who do you think does it the best?
When I say using your voice as an instrument, is sometimes it just gets looked at as a singer is just singing, and there's a tonality to it, but it's more than that. Some singers strike a chord in people that just, through the way that they emote, it just does something to people. Amy Winehouse was one of those people for me. Chris Cornell was someone for me, which just completely opened my eyes to a completely different world. Super Unknown, I think, is probably, in my personal opinion, it's one of the top 5 greatest records ever recorded.
Oh, yeah.
Going back further, my dad changed my life when I was 14 years old, because when I was a teenager, I was heavily influenced into grindcore, before it was called grindcore, and thrash, punk, especially UK punk. And my dad gave me an anthology of a guy when I was 14. He said, try this, you may dig this. And it was Otis Redding.
No way.
And Otis Redding got me to Al Green, which got me to Sam Cooke, which got me to Percy Sledge and to Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye got me to Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday. And that opened up a completely different door in regards to R&B and Motown. That was really the first time those singers used their voice as an instrument, because Otis Redding didn't necessarily know how to write music or read music or any of that, but all the horn sections on any of his recordings, he would sing those horn parts out, the pitches, the keys, all of it, just things like that, where you actually have a depth in the knowledge of how you want your voice represented and how you present it to the listener. Some guys and girls just know how to use their voice as an instrument.
I think you're one of them.
I try. I do my best.
Would 15-year-old you be freaking out right now with where you're at in the world?
15-year-old me would be humble.
Yeah?
Yeah. Again, man, there's not a day that goes by that I don't pinch myself just to remind myself that this is all in real time. But inside of that, too, you have to understand, for us and for me and for the band, everything that we've been able to accomplish, and really from the beginning 20 years ago, I have to give a tremendous amount of credit not only to the fan base that's been there from day one, but is also now just finding out about us. Again, what the alternative format is allowing us to do and grow that audience as well. But we've been very, very lucky that we never rest on our laurels, and we try to make sure that we keep each other in check. People oftentimes ask me, being in a band for 20 years, you all look like you still love each other, or you respect each other and you like each other. And the answer to that is we do. We absolutely love each other. It's a marriage. You have to look at it like that. We're in a place in our career where we could have separate buses. We could have separate dressing rooms. We could fly different planes, stay in different hotels and all that. None of that happens with us. We all have same dressing room, same bus. Crew rides with the band. When we're doing big shows like at the arena level, last year we had a staff of 77 people on each individual tour. So it's a lot of people, and that's a lot of responsibility.
It's a big
family. Yeah, big family and their families that we're responsible for. I think 15-year-old me, if he could flash forward and see this, I don't necessarily know what he would think. But the beauty of it is that we're living in real time.
Yeah,
man.
That's great. Well, the new album is out. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
And then 2024 is here. We're in the beginning. What's going on the rest of the year?
Man, A Symptom of Being Human is taking a very interesting trajectory. We are definitely not off cycle with this song. It's moving into other formats, which is pretty amazing. But we're already in the studio. We've been working on new material for a while. We're starting the architecture on what's going to be the international plan for 2025 and 2026 with the band, which is quite massive. We've got a handful of shows that we're going to be doing this year. Some are already announced. Some are going to be later on within the next couple of months. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that, over time this year, we're trying to balance what's going on at the moment. But we're always working, and it's always what's next. What do we have to say? What do we want to accomplish? So we're never really off cycle.
Will you have a vacation sometime soon?
No good with vacations. I had a little bit of a vacation, during the holidays last year. So I got a little bit of downtime, but there's a lot going on right now. You kind of have to, when things are moving, you have to stay at the forefront of that. And sometimes, man, you're holding on, and it's more about, I'm super stoked about the last 2 decades and where the band has arrived at the moment, but the key to success is to never arrive. There's always another mountain, there's always another gear, there's always another level to go. So here's to the next 20 and beyond.
By the way, we do have a couple theme parks here, so if you want like a little mini vacation down the road.
Scream at the top of my lungs.
Yeah, there you go.
Phil, me and you.
Yeah.
Roller coasters, let's go.
Come on. Brent from Shinedown, this has been an honor. I really appreciate you coming by.
My honor, man. Thanks for playing the song.
Of course, can't wait to see you back in Orlando playing live, too.
Thank you.